Welcome in to Any Given Saturday. Hampton is back because he loves talking college football as much as I do. And week 7 was a fun one. A lot of thrillers and a lot of questions answered across conferences. We will get more on that later. And this week, too, we have a good slate up ahead for the first time, a Big Ten East matchup, so we can finally get some questions answered
Yep.
about Ohio State and Penn State. But Hampton, first, we just got to talk about this Georgia game. A little bit of a struggle against Vanderbilt. Do you see concerns with Georgia coming off of this game? I mean, it's so interesting after the huge win against Kentucky to then come out and kind of start a little bit slow.
Yeah. Basically, we really just looked like what we had all season, until the Kentucky game. Kentucky game, we looked like a national championship team. The last week, we looked exactly like we used to look before that. And so, I mean, it was a bummer because I thought, man, if we play like that again, we'll wipe Vanny, we'll move on, and we can put in subs in third quarter, maybe fourth quarter. But no, we had to play our starters the entire game, and we relied on Brock Bowers too much. Now he's hurt. Uh, so I was bummed about it because I thought that we'd again, like we had every single game this season except against Kentucky, not played to our potential. So I'm a bit concerned. But I mean, I feel like in big games Georgia tends to show up. But it's always better when a team just shows up every single week. So it's just a bit concerning to me about that. But what do you think?
Yeah, I think the score was maybe a lot closer than it seemed. First of all, the announcers were terrible during that
Yes.
game. The entire game kept repeating. I don't even know who it was, but kept repeating about how Vanderbilt had a chance and Vanderbilt needed a score and Vanderbilt needed time on the clock. And I was like, Vanderbilt is not winning this game. They never were. They never are going to be. We rushed for almost 300 yards, and Vanderbilt's total offense was only a little bit over 200 yards. So
Yeah.
we definitely outgained them. It's definitely the turnovers that did it for us. And just that first touchdown giving up, I think, just kind of took the momentum away from the dogs.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I agree with the announcer too. I was driving, so I was listening to the radio, and I love the
Okay.
radio, listening to it. But
I do.
when I stopped at the gas stations, I turned it on to CBS, and the announcers, I was thinking, I was like, man, this announcer is good for people who've never seen football before because he explains everything so much. Like he explains what a first down is. He's like, oh, that was a good pass because it was thrown to the receiver. It's like, well, yeah, that's a pass, my guy. The commentators weren't great, but also there's never a point in the game where I was like, oh man, Georgia's in trouble. I mean, it was just
Yeah.
like we'll be fine. We're just not.
Yeah.
We're just playing. Like we don't really want to be there, which is frustrating.
That's so true about him because he was doing that, like explaining about how Vanderbilt had this chance of being in the game and really acting like Georgia and Vanderbilt were on the same scale, which of course we all know that they aren't. But I'm not super concerned with that. I think, 12 or noon game, not super hype. I mean, the stadium's not loud. I mean, it's just kind of a sleepy game. And I think
Yeah,
that it's nothing to be concerned about besides the injury, of course. But I think looking forward, Georgia's kind of tough. Couple games coming up. I mean, after the bye, we have Florida, then we have Missouri at home, and then we have Ole Miss at home, and then we travel to Knoxville. That's
yeah,
a tough stretch there. I know a lot of people are saying that Georgia's schedule was really easy, but it was really easy at the beginning. But that end of the season is really tough, especially to go back to back to back to back with SEC hard games coming through. So I don't know. I bet you there's a lot of people kind of concerned about Georgia, a little bit worried right now if that they're going to be able to make it uh, out of Atlanta, I guess. I think people would assume we're going to win the East, but Missouri completely still in it.
yeah. I don't agree with Missouri being in it, even though they statistically are, but
Right.
I don't think they actually are. But definitely, I mean, I think that's what separates a great team from just an average team is being able to play poorly away and still come out with a win. Because I feel like it's kind of a trap game. You know what I mean? You're changing an intent. You're kicking a field goal when there's like a crane behind you. I mean, it's just kind of just like why are we even here? You know what I mean? This is like run of renovation. Like an average team may play poorly and lose, but we're a good team, so we play poorly and we still win with turnovers. Like we have all season, besides Kentucky, where we showed up and we showed the team that we can be.
Yeah.
But I feel like in these upcoming weeks, we're playing legitimate SEC teams. So I'm not sure if a great team has to show up eventually, in order to win. And people do say our schedule is weak,
Yeah.
but I think as the season's gone on, our schedule's just gotten tougher, and you can see by how other teams are playing with each other that this not an easy schedule. And like teams that they were boosting up at the beginning of the season, now it's like, man, their schedule is pretty weak now too. Like the ACC, who do you have? Duke that lost Notre Dame, and Notre Dame just got blown out by Louisville. So, but Duke was ACC contender at one point. You have Michigan, who's played nobody. Ohio State, who's played best team is Maryland, when they're not that very. And Penn State, who have they played that's really good? No one either. And then the Pac-12, these teams are playing each other, but every single year the Pac-12 knocks each other out, and they haven't been able to contend in the playoffs. So just like, how good are these teams actually? You know what I mean? And so I feel like even the SEC, this is a down year. SEC is always a tough schedule to play in because they're just more physical, as evidenced by the national championship last year. TCU beat Michigan, which destroyed Ohio State, and then we steamrolled TCU. So it's basically really your opinion, but I definitely think this next few games have to be like a time for us to grow up and be like, all right, we have to show up. So if we're not, then we're going to lose. These are not that. This is not Vanderbilt. We're playing Tennessee and Knoxville, where they beat Bama last year. We're playing Ole Miss, who's a great quarterback, and they're probably the best quarterback we'll see in the regular season, in my opinion. So we've got a lot to work on before we play Florida and move on from them. So
yeah, absolutely, you're right, Hampton, and I'm glad you bring that up. We're going to talk about the playoff picture later, but yeah, I mean, Big Ten's schedules are always really weak, and it seems like we're the ones that get hated on for the schedule, but we're going to end up having a lot more ranked matchups than they probably will in the Big Ten. And that kind of will maybe factor in to who makes the playoffs if there is madness this season, which so far we are seeing. So we will talk more on that later after we discuss these amazing games. First off, we got to talk about Washington and Oregon, the big game of the week. Bo Nix and Michael Penix completely showed out, two of the better quarterbacks in the nation. I think both of them definitely on Heisman watch. Of course, Penix is probably the leader right now in the odds. Oregon actually outgained Washington in that game by over 100 yards, but 3 fourth downs that they didn't get.
Yeah.
And that is the talk of the week, Dan Lanning's decision making. And they also turned the ball over more than Washington did. So, no, I'm lying. Washington turned it over. Oregon didn't. But it was the fourth downs that were the turnovers. Yeah. My thing about this is this what you're talking about with the Pac-12 being the Pac-12, or are these two legit teams that are competing with teams like Georgia?
So Oregon, even like for a while now, have been an offensive team, but now Dan Lanning is a very defensive guy, which we know because he's at Georgia. But so Oregon has always been extremely aggressive. Even when Marcus Mariota was there and Mario Cristobal were there, and Justin Herbert, they were extremely aggressive, and so they live and die by that. And so some games, and most of the time, especially with Bo Nix, is we both know that he's so dynamic, he makes things happen out of nowhere. Like no, they gambled and they lost this time, even though I personally think they played better, and I feel like if they would have done what you and I would have done, then they probably would have won. Just kick a field goal, you know what I mean? And that field goal would have said overtime would have been for the win, and then they would have gone in overtime. And this is at home against Washington, and they played better away at Washington than Washington did at home. And so I feel like it was a very good game, but I'm not convinced like that these are the two of the top 5 teams in the country. I'm not convinced of that at all. Just for like the reason that we said, I don't think that they're there yet. I feel like offensively they are. And I feel like bar some risky play calls that Dan Lanning made, Oregon should have beaten Washington. Now it's a whole completely different story. So it's more just Pac-12 knocking each other out. And since I don't think Washington is as good as Oregon, I think Washington's going to get beat. So we're going to have a bunch of one-loss teams in the Pac-12 again. So I think it's just pinball in there, just crazy football everywhere.
That's a hot take, Hampton, because everyone around the country right now is assuming that Washington will go undefeated and win the Pac-12. And they might face off again, Oregon and Washington, because Pac-12 did get rid of their division. So it will be the top two teams going to their title game. But you make a good point, Hampton, in that Oregon should have won that game. For those of you that don't know, 2 of those fourth downs that they didn't convert were inside field goal range, where they probably should have kicked a field goal, one of them being in the fourth quarter. I don't remember exactly what the score was, but they were in a situation where maybe they were down 8 or 11 or something like that. And instead of just kicking the field goal, they went for it. They didn't get it. They got their ball right back. They got a touchdown, got the 2-point conversion. And then Oregon's down 3. So I guess it was 11. They're down 3. If they had kicked, it would have been tied. And that would make the difference in the game because the final score was by 3. And then at the end of the game, Dan Lanning made the decision to go for 4th and 3 on about the 50-yard line-ish. I'm not exactly sure where it was to ultimately seal the game. I like that call. It's very controversial right now in college football because if he had punted it away, they say, maybe you could have punted it inside the 10 and made Michael Penix go a full length. Michael Penix could have gone that full length. There was still 2 minutes on the clock. I don't have a problem with being gutsy and going for the 4th and 3 because if you do get it, you do win the game. Like if Bo Nix had converted that, they win the game. And you don't even have to worry about Michael Penix going down the field. If you punt it, they have 2 minutes to score. And I don't know how you feel about that. I like that call by Dan Lanning, but yeah, the field goals, I think he messed up there.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, the last play in the first half, they drove down the field, and so kicking a field goal, they went forward on 4th and goal at like 4, and they didn't make it. That's 3 points there. And at the end of the game, that's a tie ball game.
Yep.
And the field goal been for the win. And the other time you described was another one where make that you're ahead by 3 already. So it's just I don't know. I mean, I feel like that's Oregon though. They're going to do that. Yeah. That's who they are.
No poor kicker missing that one at the end, and I hate it for him because it's not his fault. Like he should have never been put in that situation because he should have been able to kick earlier in the game, like we said. And I mean, Bo Nix did what he could to get down the field in whatever 30 seconds it was, but it just wasn't enough. And I think it's important to remind people, like, this game was at Washington, y'all. Like, they won by 3. So if you put those two teams on a neutral field, I'm going the Ducks all day long. And so for me, I'm still pretty sure that Oregon's going to make these playoffs. You seem to not know what's going to happen with the Pac-12, thinking that they're going to kind of eat each other up. But I actually think that Oregon and Washington are pretty legit. I don't see many other teams that are impressing me more than they are, to be honest. I mean, obviously we've talked about Georgia's struggle. Alabama's definitely struggled, and Big Ten hasn't had any tough games yet. So I definitely think that they're legit, and I definitely think that one of the two, if not both, are going to make it into the playoffs.
Yeah. I think, I don't know. I don't know if they're making the playoffs. Washington has to play in a row at USC versus Utah, then at Oregon State.
Yep, they do.
3 in a row. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not sure if they'll win all of those. I'm not convinced about them. Then Oregon has to play those same teams, but not in that order. They're at Utah. They're at Utah, but they're home against USC and they're home against Oregon State. I feel like Oregon can beat all those teams. I'm not convinced that Washington can win those 3 in a row. I'm not. And I think that if I make a prediction now, I'll say that every single team that's in the Pac-12, like the 2 teams that play, will already have 1 loss.
Okay.
So I don't know. We'll see. The Pac-12, I mean, it depends on how everything else goes, because we could have an undefeated, Florida State, an undefeated Georgia, and an undefeated Oklahoma, undefeated Big Ten team, and that's it. Pac-12's out. But who knows? Every conference is kind of up in the air at this point. We're only in week 7, so
It's kind of weird to me how many people are like taking the Washington win and the Oklahoma win and running with it. Because
mhm.
it's like, they're gonna have to play this team again, and usually you don't beat the same team twice.
Mhm.
It's actually statistically in Texas's and Oregon's favor to come back and win that game if there is a rematch.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of weird to me that so many people are just automatically throwing Washington in their top four. So I'm glad that we have a little bit of a different outlook on that. And like you said, USC, Utah, and Oregon State all still just have one loss in the Pac 12. So, well, USC's isn't even in the Pac 12. So, definitely a shot for them to sneak in there as well. Speaking of USC, absolute embarrassment by Notre Dame, 48-20. Caleb Williams, 3 interceptions, 5 turnovers as a whole for the Trojans. I don't think anyone was expecting that one, Hampton.
No, not at all. It was awesome though. I loved it personally. I'm not a big fan of him or Lincoln Riley, or I don't like USC, so whatever. But I was extremely impressed. I feel like that was Notre Dame saying, we have all, I mean, we have nothing to lose. I mean, we're not making the playoffs. Let's just go out and have fun and play football, and they did. It was great. So I love their coach. I'm not a big fan of their quarterback. I don't know why. He reminds me of Noah Khan. You know who that is?
Uh,
But he's just a folk singer. But I was really impressed. I was like, man, they really humbled this average USC team with a really
uh,
good quarterback. You know what I
yeah.
mean? So it was fun to watch.
Yeah, and we had concerns about USC after their performance against Colorado, and just knowing that they didn't have a
Mhm.
defense. But Notre Dame, I don't feel like we really knew what was going on with them after they lost to Louisville. And
Yeah,
uh, I mean, obviously they're out of it, but I don't think we knew if they were going to have the heart to still continue their season. But they did, and they knocked off a team that was a lot of people's playoff contender, and Caleb Williams probably not going to win the Heisman after that bad performance. So definitely a big win there. Another Pac-12 game was Oregon State giving UCLA their second loss. So UCLA is probably out of the Pac-12 conversation.
yeah, yeah, definitely. That was nice. And then there it is again. It's like, I don't think Oregon State's a real Pac-12 contender. It's like they're just knocking each other out. And I mean, I feel like every conference does that, but Pac-12 always does that. They always just knock each other out. Usually in SEC, there's at least one undefeated team. Other conferences the same, but Pac-12 is always at least a team with every team has one loss. So it's fun to watch.
And one of those Pac-12 teams was Arizona beating Washington State 44-6.
Yeah,
I have not
crazy.
heard anyone talk about this because there's no need to talk about it because Arizona has 3 losses, Washington State has 2 losses. That is a huge beatdown, a huge upset.
Mhm.
Arizona coming in hot, upsetting these teams lately, and
Yeah,
they're not going to make the playoffs, but definitely Pac-12 fashion, I guess.
yeah. No, I mean, they almost beat USC last 2 weeks ago.
Right, right.
So
So Arizona's got something cooking there, but
yeah, it's fun.
moving on to the SEC East showdown of the week was Missouri and Kentucky. Missouri was down 14-0 at the beginning of that game. Actually, when I turned it on and I thought, oh gosh, I picked Missouri as my lock of the week to win. I was very confident that they were going to win that game. And then when I saw that score, I about said, oh gosh, Cassidy is wrong. But after that, they just tied it together. Did you see the fake punt?
No, I did not see that.
So
Oh,
they were on maybe about the 40-ish. And
uh-huh.
Missouri's kicker can make anything,
Oh yeah, yeah,
right? And
yeah.
so
Of course.
I was like, I mean, it was going to be, I think, about a 55, 56 yard field goal. So I'm like, kick it. You're down 14-0. What you got to lose at this point?
Yeah.
Kick the field goal. Like, um, you're away, kick it. And they punt, and I think in my head, I wonder if this is going to be a fake punt because why aren't they kicking it? And it sure was. The punter threw it about a 40, 50-yard touchdown.
That's crazy. I didn't know that.
Yep, so that
Wow.
started, that was Missouri's first score, and from there it was history. A huge win for Missouri.
Yeah.
So, speaking of Missouri, you say that they're not a threat in the East?
Yeah, I don't think they are.
Okay.
Writing it down.
We'll see about that when they enter Athens in November. Alabama survives a score against Arkansas. I would have never guessed that. The way Arkansas has
Yeah,
been playing, I mean, they've been playing well. I mean, a bunch of close games so far this year, but you just assume Alabama's gonna go in and absolutely kill
yeah,
Arkansas. But they were really close to losing to the Hogs. Jalen Miller had a really bad performance coming off of his better performance the week before against Texas A&M. So I don't know if Alabama's legit. It's kind of hard to know. There's a lot of question marks for me right there.
yeah. I agree with you.
Yeah, and they play Tennessee this week, and we will make our pick on that later. Tennessee beats A&M in a terrible offensive game. I did watch that. I was watching it at the same time as a couple other games, but no one could really get the ball rolling in that one.
No, yeah, that was an extremely boring game to watch. Really tough, and that was one of those games where I was like, man, Tennessee was one of the like front runners for the East besides Georgia this year, and
Right.
it was terrible.
Yeah.
It was tough.
It just no one's talking about him. Like Missouri and Kentucky have been somewhat of a talk in the East, but like no one is talking about Tennessee. And we have to travel to Knoxville, so I
Yeah,
mean it'll definitely be on upset alert, but it is interesting to me that no one's really worried about it.
I agree with you. I agree.
And I have to mention another great SEC East game was Florida going on the road to South Carolina and beating them. I know no one cares because both of these teams are absolutely terrible, but Florida still only has one loss on the year, so technically they're still in the East race. And they played really well. Graham Mertz really showing his skill through the air. It was an
Mhm.
absolute thriller. To be honest, I watched all that game because Nolan, unfortunately, is a Florida fan. And that game actually might have been better than Oregon Washington. I'm sure no one watched it, but it was fun for sure. And then
I
going to the,
I didn't even watch that a second of
yeah,
it.
I wouldn't have watched it if I didn't have to, but you know how it goes.
Yeah,
Um, but going to your ACC, Hampton, I hate to say that your Miami Hurricanes lost another game.
that's right. That's right. I mean, what can you do? Coach is an idiot. Don't have good talent. They're no James Madison. So what can you do?
Yeah, but North Carolina putting up a pretty impressive performance against them,
Yeah,
I'd say. I think a lot of people were thinking it'd either be close or maybe Miami would kind of come back to rebound against the loss against Georgia Tech. So North Carolina definitely still in this race. They're still undefeated. Like, what are you expecting to happen? I mean, you mentioned it earlier, but we could have so many one-loss teams and only
Mhm.
four people getting to make it.
Yeah. And I mean, I think Georgia's going to make it. So I don't think Missouri is really a threat. I think Missouri would be a threat if the game wasn't in Athens. Because I feel like if the game's in Athens, we're going to show up and just demolish them like Kentucky. So I'm not really worried about Missouri. I think we can beat any team in the West. And the game's in Atlanta, so I think we'll be fine. I'm not as confident as Paul Feinbaum, but I think Georgia's going to make it. And then one team from the Big Ten is what will make it for sure. I feel like was one team was just going undefeated and win the Big Ten and play Iowa like they always do and beat them. Um, and then I think Oklahoma or Texas. I don't know which one, but like you said, statistically Texas because they'll play again and may win. But Utah played USC twice, right? Once regular season, once championship,
Right.
and beat them twice. So who knows? And that's with the Heisman.
Yeah.
So you never know. So I guess right now, if I had to choose, I choose Georgia, Florida State. So I don't think they have any real competition in the ACC. I mean, I think we have a bunch of pretenders like North Carolina and Duke, but I'm not worried about them. So Georgia, Florida State. Um, I have Michigan. I don't think Penn State's real.
Okay.
And then I guess Texas. I'd rather Oklahoma, but I don't see any big Pac-12 team making it. So Georgia, Oklahoma, Florida State, and Michigan. But for five, I'd probably put Oregon there. So
Yeah, I like it. I'm having a hard time figuring out what I think. I do think that I mean, obviously for undefeated you're going to make it. Jacob posed a good question, or it might have been Tyler last week, and said, "What happens if there are five conference champions that all are one loss. So they said this is assuming that Texas wins the Big 12. This is assuming that Oregon wins the well, really doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. But saying that every conference champion is going to be one loss, no matter who it is, which conference gets left out?
Which one do you think?
I said the Big 12 because their schedule is weaker than every other conference. So schedule wise, they won't have the wins that everyone else will. Like, let's just say it's Texas. They beat Alabama, I guess, but that's it.
Yeah.
Whereas Big Ten would have, well, I guess if they have one loss, and they might only have one ranked win on their resume. So I said it would either be Big Ten or Big 12.
Okay. I think it'd be ACC,
You think?
or just because I feel like it really depends on who your one loss is to. You know what I mean?
It
'Cause
does.
ACC, who are you going to lose to? Like North Carolina or Duke? Duke's already lost to like Notre Dame, who got destroyed by Louisville. So it's like, they're not even a good team. Like, so I mean, I think Georgia losing to like Ole Miss is better than Florida State losing to Duke, in
Right.
my opinion, at least. Even though, so I don't know. It depends on who's like the worst loss. I'll probably say ACC or the Big Ten as
Yeah.
well. I wouldn't say Pac-12.
It will definitely be fun if that happens.
Yeah.
And another question I have with the playoffs is which conference has the best chance of getting 2 teams in? Who do you think?
I mean, you know who I think. I think Big Ten. Mainly just because I mean, okay. Well, I'm gonna go conference by conference and say why I don't think.
Okay.
So in the SEC, Alabama won't have a signature win if they, lose to Georgia in the SEC championship. Who do they beat? No one. There's no one they beat that's really good.
Yeah, I think that would only be the case if they beat us, probably.
Yeah. And then us, who's our signature win? Kentucky?
You're
I
right.
mean, no. And then Pac-12, I mean, I think they have a lot of good teams, but for like say Oregon, like Washington wins out, then Oregon's sitting there losing to them, and then who knows what's going to happen with them? They still have a lot of games left too, and then they've lost to Washington twice. They're not going to put a 2-loss team in. And if Oregon beats Washington, then they have that one loss over them, and then it's really just like the committee's going to have to decide which team's better. Washington, which beat Oregon earlier, or these other teams. But I would personally put it. Actually, trying to think about it because Pac-12 may be more impressive than Big Ten. I guess it's just the manner in which they lose because if Washington beats like Oregon State or USC, but Ohio State beats Penn State and Iowa, it's really just which teams do you think are better? You know what I mean? So, do you think Pac-12 right?
I think either Pac-12 or Big 12.
Big 12.
Because I am fully anticipating Oklahoma and Texas to win out and face each other again. And if Texas wins that game, which I'd be putting my money on it, then I think both have a very strong case of making it. That doesn't mean that they both will make it because it obviously matters what happens with everyone else, but they have the case. And in the same way, I think Oregon's going to beat Washington. I'm not convinced, like you said earlier, I'm not convinced that Washington's going to go undefeated. It's very hard to go undefeated.
Yeah.
I think since Oregon already has that loss, I think it actually helps them because I think they're going to be so mad at the rest of their games and they're going to want it so bad to go to that conference title game and win. I think Oregon 100% is going to win out and win the Pac-12. Like, I'm pretty confident about that. So I think that they have a pretty good chance of making 2 in. I don't see it happening with SEC, like you said. I think ACC has a good chance because they don't all play each other. So it's not the same situation as the other three conferences.
Mhm.
And then Big Ten, my thing with the Big Ten is, let's just say hypothetically that Michigan, Oregon, I mean not Oregon, Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State all beat each other in a triangle.
Yeah.
Like, let's just say that happens. Or forget about Penn State. Let's say Michigan, Ohio State each have a loss. I mean, whatever
Mhm.
happens, let's just say that they all have a loss.
Yeah.
Um, only one of them goes to the Big Ten title game. And I don't see a team that is sitting out of the conference title game getting into the playoffs this year. I just think, I think if it's Georgia, Alabama, I think the loser of that would get in before them. I think the loser of Oklahoma, Texas would get in before them. I think the loser of the Pac-12 would get in before them. I think the loser of the ACC would get in before them because they're playing an extra game
Yeah.
and they have harder schedules. So I just don't see a Big Ten East 2 getting in this year.
See, I'm looking at Oklahoma's schedule, and I mean, besides Texas, they don't really have a signature win. There's really no other ranked opponent, and
Yeah.
they barely beat Texas. Like it was like we saw, it was like on the last drive, like the last play. So, I mean, if Texas beats them and it's not like just a complete butt whooping, I don't know if like I don't know if it's like a nail biter. I don't see Oklahoma getting in. Because they're gonna look at, okay, they did beat Texas earlier, but barely, and Texas beat them later on. It's like who they play after that? No one. And then and then Big Ten, at least one of those teams would have a win against another big team.
You're
You know what I mean?
right. Yeah,
So
and Texas does have the win against Alabama too, and then they would be a conference champion. So
yeah,
maybe not two Big 12 teams, but I just don't see there being room for two Big 10. I just
yeah, I do agree with you on that. Now that you're talking about it, I'm kind of like I'm coming around your side a bit because I would also I don't know if you would realize, but when I was speaking it through, I got to a point where I was like, actually, I don't agree with kind of my opinion. So I
well,
actually agree with
I've
you.
heard your take, your original take now that you've changed it, but I've heard your original take on a couple podcasts and everyone kind of seems to be thinking that. And I was texting someone about it the other day and I kind of laid it all out and I think they changed their mind too, because I think that we just assume, since I mean last year Ohio State and Michigan were both in the playoffs, so I think we just assume that it's so common because for some reason, like, we have this Big Ten bias of like they're
Yeah, we
so
do.
good. Like, they are not. They're not good. They don't have a strong schedule, and they're all in the same division. So, oh yeah, I'd probably say Pac-12 would have the best chance of getting two in, and I still have Oregon, probably Georgia or Alabama. Like, I think I don't know, but I think one of us will be in. I don't think it'll just be neither. And then probably Florida State, and then probably, oh, I don't know. I
Yeah,
don't
it's tough.
I guess Texas or Oklahoma will probably get in because their schedule's so dang easy. So I don't know. Maybe Florida State won't make it. I don't know. I know you left Pac-12 out, but I have them in. So
And I'd love them to be in.
I got to decide between Florida State and Big Ten.
Hmm.
So maybe I'm counting Florida State out now. I don't know, but I got Oregon. I still got my ducks in there.
I want Oregon in. We both like them.
Yeah.
So who knows? Who knows?
Yeah. It's gonna be crazy. The playoff picture will be fun. I think the first playoff rankings come out. It's either this week or the week after. Like this upcoming week or the week
Yeah.
after. I don't remember.
I feel like it's this weekend. But shoot, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure. But we should get some answers about the Big Ten East on Saturday as Penn State goes to Columbus to play Ohio State. Penn State has lost the last 6 games, I
Yeah.
believe, there, and they haven't won in like a long time.
Yeah. Feels like forever.
Yeah, like more than 10 years.
Yeah.
But Penn State's been playing pretty well this year. I mean, they haven't really played anyone yet, have you mentioned, but they haven't really had close games either. So it will be their first test of the year.
Yeah. I feel like every year Penn State is like built up, and then they play Ohio State and they get whooped.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know. I hope it's a good game. I want it to be a good game because I still don't think we've seen Ohio State play a quality team yet, and I really haven't been that impressed by them yet. So it'd
Yeah.
be fun to see a good game.
Yeah. Ohio State's quarterback, Kyle McCord, actually played really well against Notre Dame. I think as a whole, the team didn't play great against Notre Dame. Like Notre Dame should have won that game. They should have a loss on their record, but he played really well. So since it's at Ohio State, I'm probably leaning more towards Ohio State, but I'm just not impressed with either or quite yet.
Me too. That's exactly what I feel, and that's why I don't think Missouri has a chance in the East because the game's at Georgia.
Right. Yeah, the home field definitely matters. Tennessee traveling to Tuscaloosa.
Yeah,
Alabama probably looking to avenge what happened last year. What do you think's going to happen here? Both teams kind of coming off a bad week offensively.
yeah. It's tough because I want to pull for Bama, because it'd make it better for us to have an SEC East team with a loss, but also I don't want Bama to win. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't like pulling for them. But I think I'm going to pull for Bama. But like I literally just was talking about how don't have Missouri in because Georgia is at home. It's at Georgia. And then we have Ohio State at home, so we have Ohio State. But I think that this could be a good game. I don't know if Tennessee's gonna win. I think Tennessee can definitely win this game. I feel like both teams are on kind of a down year. I mean, being completely honest, Tennessee has not been great for a while. This last year they had a really good year. It's kind of like LSU, but Tennessee's ceiling is still LSU's like first floor. You know what I'm saying? Because
Yeah.
LSU got a natty and Tennessee lost to the Gamecocks. So I don't know. I think they're both on down year. And they both have quarterbacks that aren't performing like we thought they would. So I think it's kind of a toss up, but more on Alabama's side than Tennessee's.
Definitely agree. I think Joe Milton will have to play really well to beat Alabama since it's in Tuscaloosa. And what version of Jalen Milroe will we see? We have no idea. So it's absolutely a toss up, but I'm definitely picking Bama.
For
I don't
sure.
expect Tennessee to do it back to back.
Hmm.
Another SEC game. Ole Miss traveling to Auburn. Ole Miss most definitely still in this West race after beating
Yeah.
LSU. So this one's on major upset alert for me. I think Auburn might get their first big win of the year.
I would love that. I thought I mean Auburn's not a very good team, but playing at Auburn is still a tough
It's
task.
tough.
So yeah, I mean as Georgia knows. So I feel like this is definitely an opportunity for Auburn to make a statement and to get the coach a good win. He really needs it to keep his job.
Yeah.
So I completely agree with you. I think Ole Miss probably should win, but I definitely can see Auburn play on upset.
Yeah, and I'm sure Lane Kiffin is not overlooking this game, knowing how hard it is to play in Jordan Hare and a lot of pressure on him still. I mean, he played terrible against Alabama. He can't ever seem to really win the big games, but he
Yep.
beat LSU this year. And so he still has a shot. And so he's got to continue to go week by week and beat these hard SEC teams. And uh Auburn's gonna be ready to play. I'm actually really excited to see this game. I think it'll be close, and I think it's definitely on upset alert.
I think
South
so.
Carolina playing Missouri. You don't seem to be too worried about Missouri, but is this on upset alert? South Carolina hasn't been very impressive yet this year.
No, they haven't. I don't know. I don't know because I feel like sometimes South Carolina just shows up and they perform really well, and you're
Yeah.
just like, what the heck's going on? You know what I mean? Other times they're just trash. So I don't know. I mean, why not? I think anything can be an upset alert, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But
You're right.
some things more so than others. But I really think that Missouri had this one.
Yeah, I agree. Spencer Rattler played fantastic against Florida last week, but Missouri knows that they've got to keep winning. They actually have a pretty tough schedule coming up. So
Yeah,
they know that they got to get this one done. So I think that they will.
I think so too.
another big matchup is Duke and Florida State. You don't seem to
Yeah.
think that Duke really has a shot in the ACC.
No, no, I don't. I mean, they beat Notre Dame. Cool. I mean, that what does that
But
have to do with anything?
they didn't even beat them, remember?
No, they didn't. They didn't. Oh, yeah, you're right. You're right. They lost to them. Who did they beat? Who did Duke beat? That was good.
Clemson.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, this isn't like 2017. I'm saying this isn't 2018. This is 2023. So Clemson is not who they were. I'm saying that's like how all of Miami's fans are like, oh, we won in the 2000s. Like, dog, that's like 23 years ago. Who cares what happened back then? Doesn't matter. So, but like, I know Clemson's like still a team that in our minds are like, oh man, Clemson's like top tier, but they're not.
Right.
That's why I'm not
It's
convinced about
another one of those bias things that we
that.
just have in our brain.
Yeah. So, and I do think that Florida State should beat them, especially since Duke's starting quarterback is out. I think that they should enroll them. But I mean, it'd be a good game. Duke's backup quarterback was playing pretty well last week. But I do think that Florida State's quarterback, even though he has his off weeks, should take care of this game and they should win it. So
I totally agree. And then in the Pac-12, Utah traveling to USC, USC coming off that embarrassment against Notre Dame. Utah's still very well in this.
yeah. Yeah. What do you think? What do you think?
It's hard to know.
Yeah.
I think since it's at USC, I think they'll keep their season alive. They lost twice last year to Utah.
It does.
There's going to be a lot of revenging wanting to go on here between last week and last year. 5 turnovers. Caleb Williams, 3 picks last week. I mean, he's going to come to play. It's just hard not to go with the home team here.
Yeah, I agree with you. I want to go for Utah because obviously
Yeah.
I like them. And I do think that they are a good team. But I don't know if Caleb Rising is back. Do you know if he is? I don't think he
He's
is.
not.
He's
He's not.
not. Ah, well, yeah. I guess I'm gonna go with USC, but it's still tough because I am not convinced that they're that great. Because they give up a lot of points to Notre Dame, give up a lot of points to Colorado. Um, so I don't know. I really do think that Utah has a chance, but I guess I have to go for USC. You know what? I'm gonna go for Utah because why not?
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. And also,
USC's defense is absolutely terrible. So
yeah,
if they can
yeah,
put points on the board, they can top USC's offense.
yeah. And Utah can be pretty dynamic on offense. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. Who knows? When Utah wins, I'm like, oh man, I totally called it. But obviously, I don't know. So we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see is right because this week's interesting. Of course, it's Georgia's bye week and it's a lot of people's bye week across. So it's not super stacked, but definitely some good games to keep your eye on.
Mhm.
Hampton, do you have a best bet of the week? Is there any lock of what you think's going to happen?
That James Madison will be undefeated. Oh, they already won tonight. So they're 7-0, so that's a lock. A lock. Shoot. I guess a lock is Bobo changing up his entire offensive, scheme to not include Brock Bowers. That's a lock. But an actual lock. Now that I'm not joking. Probably Jinkies. I don't know. Okay, I think that Ohio State's going to beat Penn State. I think that's a lock. I don't think that Penn State is going to beat Ohio State.
That's a good lock. I mean, it's a good lock to have. A lot of people are calling that upset.
It's not a very risky lock. I feel like that's very vanilla of me.
I don't think many of the locks this week are very risky.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my best bet would be Auburn, straight up against Ole Miss. Huge upset.
Really? That's a good one. Okay.
Ole Miss's offense is very dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
One of the better quarterbacks and one of the better running backs in the league, without a doubt. So if they show up, they're going to beat Auburn. But I just have a feeling that they're not. Still coming off that big LSU win and still got a long way to go. I think Auburn is going to be super excited to bring them in. And I think they're going to play like they did against Georgia. And they're going to force turnovers. And Ole Miss is going to be crying, waving their West goodbye.
That'd be a bummer because I don't want Bama to win
I
the
don't
West.
want. I mean, I don't want Auburn to beat Ole Miss. I
But
want Miss to win,
yeah.
but I
Oh,
think
yeah.
Auburn's gonna win.
Yeah. I think I have another lock. So Clemson is at Miami. And
Okay.
I have Clemson. I think that's a lock.
Okay. So Miami with 3 straight losses, you're saying.
Yeah, I think so.
That's
Yeah.
a pretty good lock. I mean, that's actually probably a little bit of a hot take because usually
Yeah.
don't lose.
I just feel like my Ohio State lock was so lame since they've like destroyed. It's like us against like, a bad like, who we beat so many like Kentucky. It's like I usually even though it's like a hot game, it's like we usually beat them every year. Just
Yeah,
like State and Penn State. It's like they beat them every year. And it's at home. Lock. So,
right.
I don't know. But yours is a hot take. I like that one. That one's better than mine.
I mean, it's tough to make mine though because Ole Miss could literally win by like 40. I mean, LSU
Yeah.
beat Auburn by like 30 points last week, and the exact same thing could happen. So yeah, I'm not confident in it at all, but I just have a little bit of a feeling. So,
Yeah. Yeah. That's how you decide things is by
right,
I'm that's how I am. I'm just like I feel like this is gonna happen. I don't care what the stats say. That's kind of how I feel about Utah.
right.
So it'll be fine.
Well, we will see what happens. And anything else, Hampton going out?
Shoot, I'm trying to think of anything. Um, no, not really. I mean, I just that I'm not sure. I'm still not like I said. I'm not like we both said. We're not. I'm still not sold on Washington. I know it's a big game, but I wouldn't. I know to all of our millions of listeners, like and subscribe. I don't think I wouldn't put all your eggs in one basket with Washington. I want to hold up on that one. So
If you were right about that, I am copying and pasting this and putting it somewhere or somewhere because every single show and article I've read has said Washington, Washington, Washington. And
yeah, all season people have been talking about Washington all season.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And I don't see a world where Oregon loses twice to Washington. So go
yeah,
Ducks. Oregon will be in the playoffs. And when that happens, Hampton and Cassidy on any given Saturday might be put on ESPN because apparently we're the only people that think that. So
that's right. That's I mean, and we know Paul Feimon listens, so I think we're fine.
I think we're good. All right. Well, we will get back with y'all next week. See ya.
That's right. Go Ducks.